What's up, amigos? Commander Jaime here today. Today I'm excited to show off Maelstrom overdress. We actually just got the reveals yesterday when I actually recorded this video, and so this is really raw, really preliminary type of build, and I already see some key differences that are, you know, pros and cons, especially when you compare it to a deck like Flagburg. And so really I want to take this like deck profile video and kind of analyze that, and also give some suggestions at the end too, so that way you guys can get a chance to try it out for yourselves and we can come up with a solidified build as well. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Check out Nex Lvl Gaming's playmats, and they actually have a lot of mats with your favorite units. They're great quality playmats too as well, and you can use the affiliated link as a 10% discount on your next purchase. Also, I've become an official Metafy coach for Cardfight Vanguard, and so if you ever want to get one-on-one time with me to help your skill level, go ahead and book a session with me. I can help with premium format, standard, or even clans like Aquaforce and many others, and even YouTube as well. I just want to help fellow amigos and make an impact within the community itself. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message too. You can use the link down below in the description to book your session as well. So what's really cool with the build too is that we get an entire new ride line that's specific to Aquaforce and Stoicheia. And so our grade 1 is actually Theo, and then our grade 2 is Algos, and then our grade 3 of course is Maelstrom. So it's a pretty cool iconic ride line because we've seen this units in like the OG Limit Break era, we've seen it and also retrain in V series, and now we're seeing it in D series, which is really cool. So Theo, when this actually gets rolled upon, you're able to search a card called like a Blue Storm Fleet card, and we actually got an order card too as well, and that's what the grade 3 order at the bottom left with a picture of Maelstrom is. And so we actually also got an order to mess with. And once you go to grade 2, or I should say when Algos gets ridden upon by a Maelstrom, let's say for example, you actually get to check the top 7 for any Aquaforce card or Tier Dragon and Superior Call it to the field, which is like a free +1, good for setup, especially if you need like some missing key pieces. That check top 7 actually has helped me a lot in my games with my play testing too, so you get a huge consistency boost. Plus it's a +1 in a sense too, so it helps conserve hand. Same thing with Theo, you search for an order, it's a +1. But what's really interesting about Maelstrom though, it's like, what does it actually do, right? And it has 2 skills. The first skill is really unique, where you can discard a card, Superior Call something from the soul, and then give it the ret text ability where at the end of the first battle that this unit attacked, and if your opponent's Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater, you can counterblast 1 and restand. So you literally create restanders from Maelstrom, which is really cool. So now the dilemma is, it's like, okay, what cards can go into Soul? So that way you can make them into restanders. And obviously you can keep Persona writing, so you have access to a Maelstrom, which is a 13k beater that can become a restander. You have your right line on top of that as well, like Theo. And Theo on Rearguard Circle gets +5k when you have a Maelstrom Vanguard. So it's a 13k attacker as well, which is really simple, easy to use if you need it. Algos also gets power when it attacks the 4th battle or more, and then if it hits, you draw a card too. So there's some on-hit pressure there too. So as you're going through your right line, you're able to like take advantage of those units too. However, and I think most of you already realized too, probably the most beneficial unit to really use Maelstrom's skill is Inlet Pulse. Another caveat that I forgot to mention with Maelstrom Superior Call and skill is that at the end of the turn, that unit called by this effect actually goes back to Soul. In a way, it's good and bad. Good because you get to reuse that unit if you want to the next turn. Bad because you discarded a card and now you lost the rearguard, so it's like a -1. But Inlet, remember that Inlet Pulse can get around that. It can go into Soul before the requirement of Maelstrom at the end of the turn to draw you a card if it's Soul 4 battles or more. And it's Aquaforce, right? It's the essence of getting to the 4th battle. And this deck is no different. And as you can see, Maelstrom really helps with that, the consistency. You have a restander can attack, then you just need another rearguard in the front row, and your Vanguard can be the 4th battle. Now, why does the number of battles matter? Right, and that's where Maelstrom's second skill comes into play, where it attacks if it's 4th battle or more. You can draw a card and retire an opponent's rearguard, and what's really cool, it's free. That's it. It's simple as that. You know, it may seem a little bit lackluster when you compare it to Flagburg, right? Flagburg can draw a card, retire 2, And at the same time, if you get to the 5th battle, it has guard restriction, which makes it really hard for the opponent to guard against Flagburg attacks, right? So when you compare it as like in a vacuum, you think Flagburg would be a bit better than Maelstrom, and the essence of that is true. But as you build an Aqua Force deck, most of the time you have to see the big picture, all right? And with Maelstrom, it's not just the Vanguard doing something, but it's also your rearguards that get you there as well. And what I realized too is that this deck is actually pretty consistent, getting you to the 4th battle at least, for sure. Especially if you go second. Whenever you do Maelstrom skill, that point on moving forward, you're pretty much guaranteed to get to the 4th battle. But this deck can go to 4, 5, 6 battles pretty easily as well, because we have other cards too. And remember, with Inlet Pulse, the first skill only works with Flagburg. And so we really just play for the 2nd skill, go into Soul, draw a card. It's a 13k attacker, so this lets you freely to hit 13k Vanguards. You don't have to worry about power-ups or anything like that. That's actually very vital. And you'll see as I explain with some of the cards too as I go forward, but it's just as simple as playing the 2nd skill. The 1st skill is Flagburg restricted, but the Maelstrom skill, when you call it from the Soul into rearguard circle from the following turn that it went into Soul, then it becomes that skill, but in the form of a Counterblast 1, which is kind of cool when you think about it. And it's very vital. In fact, you can place multiple Inlet Pulses behind a Vanguard or behind another unit too, and you can actually draw for each of them and build a massive Soul a lot easier that way too. The Counterblast and the Soul Blast are actually pretty vital in this deck, and I'll actually elaborate with the rearguards now. And so let's go to the 2nd row where we have our grade 2s for the most part. So the very left, we have 4 Tidal Assault, and this card is probably one of the most important cards in this deck to make things happen, especially if you're going first. That 1st skill, Maelstrom, doesn't make that Reek standard work, because it does check for the grade 3 for the opponent's Vanguard to be grade 3, so you have to rely on something else to get you to the 4th battle. And that's where Tidal even becomes more vital. And it's very restrictive in the conditions, because it has to attack the 2nd battle. Your Vanguard has to be Maelstrom. It has to be in standing position too, on top of that. And then at the end of the battle, then you can finally pay a Counterblast 1 to restand. And it's just a 10k body. There's no power-up, anything like that. Its 1st skill is really odd. And it's whenever it attacks, you can Soul Blast 1 to give I don't know if it's Maelstrom specific, but it gives the Vanguard plus 5k, which is really odd when you think about it. You'd rather give the plus 5k to itself or maybe another rearguard to make better numbers with the rearguards, rather than the Vanguard just getting plus 5k, which is fine. It's just something, if you want to use it, it's there. Most of my games, I didn't really use it unless it was like a finishing turn where I can just kind of like take advantage of the Soul and not have to worry about conserving that resource for the following turns to, you know, keep going. So one of the things that I was doing was trying to find a way to give Tidal some power up, because when you're going first, it's okay being a 10k because your opponent's a grade 2, they're a 10k as well. You can hit. But the problem is that if you're going second or moving forward, your opponent's at 13k. You have to give it some power up, whether it be Persona Writing or some plus 5k or 10k somewhere to actually hit. And key thing is that it doesn't have to attack Vanguard to do the restand skill. So if you want, you can poke a rearguard first to potentially knock one out. And then when you attack for the 2nd time, you can boost, so you can hit a better number against a Vanguard. That's 13k. So with any 8k booster, it makes 18. If you have a power up of plus 5k, it'll make that column 23, which is really good against a trigger. By itself, it'll be 15k, which just gets over that 13k threshold. And it kind of leads me to the next card, but essentially Tidal is the main card outside of the Maelstrom skill to get you to the 4th battle, but this is also a way to get to the 5th battle. And so you can use the unit called by Maelstrom to attack first, restand it, then Tidal, restand Tidal, and now you can attack whichever makes sense to lead up to the attacks. And now you can have your Vanguard be the 4th battle, get the benefit of its full skill, and then stack any potential triggers on the remaining rearguard that's still standing. So that way you can take a benefit of critical triggers or any type of trigger, like the over trigger too on top of that, and make 5 battles a very aggressive turn in that sense. So it's very important not only to get to the 4th battle, but to 5. I just want to stress that out. And the next card is Luyuka. I think that's how you pronounce it, but essentially you can retire it, give something plus 10k. This is where you can call this and give title assault plus 10k, making it a 20k attacker. If you are doing the persona right turn, it makes it 30k, which it starts demanding a lot more shield, especially since it restands. You get to double the benefit. A similar style has been done in Flagburg decks too, like with the Sentinels itself, for example. Or you can even use it on the unit that's called from Maelstrom too, to benefit from that too. And so it's just a nice card that I tried out with Flagburg, and it's actually helped out because you may retire it and go -1, but you're also demanding more shield from your opponent too. So then they lose an extra card or two potentially. So it may be worth it in that case. And it just helps you get over that number 2 if you really need some. And kind of going into the remaining grade 2s is extra copies of Algos. I feel like these extra copies of Algos could be replaced by something else. Again, it's a 15k attacker when it's the 4th battle or more. So you can have this be a restander to a restand, especially if you did a persona right turn. That next battle where it could be like the 5th battle or the 4th battle for you, and it could actually get more 5k power. And it has the unhead pressure of drawing a card. I think most of the time in my playtesting though, this card never really hit when it was the 4th battle or more. And for 2 reasons. One, obviously because you want to prevent the draw, so your opponent may guard it. The second thing too is that your opponent may be already at 5 damage, or if they're at 4 and you put a crit on top of that, your opponent's gonna have to guard it no matter what, unless they go to 6 damage, right? And so I think there's some room for improvement for Algos. Maybe you want to try something else. I'll talk a little more of the suggestions, some things that I was thinking to maybe try out. But I just wanted to really see what Algos can do. What's really cool too is that the card next to it, we also kind of helps Algos set up a little bit better too, to be the 4th battle. And Wheel Assault is one of the new units. I wanted to see this ASAP because at the end of the battle that this unit boosted, you can Soul Blast 1 and swap 2 units. That's where you can promote more battles, and you can actually put Algos in the back row. And then when you do your 1, 2, 3, 4 battles, or 1, 2, 3 battles, you swap Algos into the front, and now Algos can easily become the 4th battle or more in that case too. So Wheel Assault with Algos is pretty synergetic in that sense too. And the other thing I want to re-emphasize is Persona Ride. Your restanders benefit from Persona Ride. The swapping units also benefit from the Persona Ride. So if you swap Algos or another beater onto that, they will see the plus 10k from the Persona Ride too. So it's even more incentivized to actually go for that. And then of course, since you roll technically to do the Persona Ride, you should have the solve for Wheel. So unless you use Maelstrom skill to do that too. So Wheel Assault is very imperative. It's another way to get to the 4th battle if you don't see Title Assault, and if you're going first too. It is like the other way to get to the 4th battle. So that way you get the maximum value of drawing a card, retiring values, apply some pressure, right? And 4 attacks is always good, better than 3, right? And so that's the essence and the core of the main units from the main deck. And so this kind of leads to the next question. It's like, okay, what are some cards that can kind of support what it's trying to do? This winning image of achieving these 4+ battles, but also making them threatening, you know? And especially if you have to deal with like damage check triggers, for example, like, is there ways to kind of overcome that? And that's where the philosophy or the orders in the bottom left come into play. So the grade 3 Maelstrom Blue Storm Fleet card, I like it and I don't like it. So I like it because, one, it's guaranteed searchable from Theo, which is really cool. It's free. When you play this card, it just cares for a Maelstrom Vanguard. That's it. It's free. The things that I don't like about it, it's a grade 3 order, so you cannot use it until your grade 3 turn. So when you ride your grade 2 turn, it's a turn that you kind of have to hold on to it. And worst case scenario, it becomes PG fodder if you really need to, if you get hit aggressively, for example. The skill is nice where it revives a card. It's like spiritual body condensation, essentially. The problem with it, though, is that it doesn't give any unit plus 5k until it sees another copy of itself in the order zone. So to clarify too, this card will actually be played on the order zone as a set order, so it stays there. It's kind of like playing Brant Gate when you have prison and you have the prison. You got the orders for like Orphis, it stays there, right? So you're playing that just like that in that way, and you revive a card, and then finally, if you play basically the second time that you will play this card, you will see another copy in that set order zone. So then you can give something plus 5k, and it just kind of like, that's like turn 4 just to get a free spiritual body condensation. And most of us are familiar with spiritual body condensation, which I didn't even play here. I played 2 copies of spiritual body condensation, and the thing with spiritual body condensation, you do Soul Blast 1, and then you revive something and give it plus 5k. The grade 3 order can let you revive something else, and then you can distribute the 5k to an existing unit if you want to. So for example, if you wanted to revive an Inlet Pulse or maybe an Algos, you can revive that and then give the plus 5k to a Tidal Assault so it could actually hit and then restand. So you can make the best use of that too. So little things like that, and the key differences, I feel like because it's searchable with Theo and that it's free, it's worth playing this card as soon as you write to grade 3. I think that's the only reason that it's worth it. And then when you see the second copy, and if you play 3, it's a free spiritual body condensation moving forward. So that's like the pros that line up with it too. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. And I wanted to, in the event where it made more sense to use spiritual body condensation immediately, or maybe even like earlier, like grade 1, grade 2 turn, you have the willpower to do so because you can play it, right? It's a grade 1 order. And at first I was going to go 3 spiritual body condensation, but the other thing that I wanted to test was the new resentment order too. It's Soul Blast 1, check the top 3, you can mill up to 1 of those cards and then revive anything from the drop zone. It's spiritual body condensation with a little potential consistency boost, because you get to dig deep, 3 cards deep in your deck for a potential piece that you don't have just yet, and you can revive that immediately if you need it in that zone. It reminds me of like when you use Maelstrom to ride over Algos and you check the top 7 for the unit that potentially is useful for the field in that moment. But it's a generic order, right? And you check the top 3. So it helps with the consistency boost. But again, if you already have the key pieces in the drop zone, then you can use cards like the Judgment Maelstrom order or the spiritual body condensation. So it's just something that I was testing. I feel like the plus 5k, whether it be from the second Judgment or spiritual body condensation in general, would be more useful. So it may be in that general direction. So I just wanted to clarify, kind of let you know what I was trying to use, what I was trying to do. Then we have the ideal faraway order. So it's the same concept with Zorga, same concept with Magnolia, same concept with Flagburg. You put this on a unit, it stacks for every other unit that it sees attack. And the easiest way you can do this is put it on a booster. So by the time that booster boosts, it can be the 4th battle or more, and you're guaranteed to see 20k plus power up for that column, for that attack. You could also put this on a restanding unit like a Tidal Assault, and since it has to attack the second battle, it'll be 15k by the time it attacks the first time. Restands, and then if you attack with another unit, it'll get plus 5, and then it becomes 20k. A booster with the 8k makes it 28k, so you can play with the numbers that way too. There's also Nectar, and what I don't like about Nectar, you have to make sure you have enough size drop zone to get like plus 10k and plus 15k, and you get the crit. And by the time you do that, especially if it's a deck that doesn't really concentrate on milling, or can get cards in the drop zone pretty fast, it might be too late at that point. Your opponent might be at 5 damage, so the crit really doesn't matter. But there are instances that it helps, right? And so I wouldn't rule that out, but I just wanted to see more of the power gain that you can potentially get from Ideal Far Away, like a 20k power up guaranteed, at least if you're going to the 4th battle or more, right? And so that's why I went that route, rather than just crit gaining in that sense too. And then lastly, just to wrap up, we do have like the PGs. I'm doing the 3-1 ratio, as you can see, so 3 of the new PGs, and if you have 2 or less cards, or if you have 1 or less cards, you don't have to discard. And then the new Blitz order too is if you're going against triple drive, it's free, right? And the crits and the draws and the heals, I am doing 8 crits, 3 draw, 1 Stoicheia trigger, A 3-1 ratio of the heals, where I'm using the one that's a crit gaining, but depending on your metagame, like if you're facing a lot of prison decks, Gravidia, it's good with this one. But if you're playing like a lot of restanding, like Thagria or Youthberg, or other clans that stand stuff, Bruce for example, you want to use the other one. So it's really up to you at that point too. Now to discuss like this versus Flagburg. For this, first off, Flagburg has multiple sets of support. In fact, it's got the new promo shelling cannon now. It can easily do 5-6 attacks. Just do keep in mind that Flagburg can be resource heavy with Counterblast, Soul Blast. It's heavily reliant on those pieces, and especially the Vanguard attack too. And I think this is the one thing that Maelstrom has over Flagburg, is that it's not as resource heavy because the Vanguard is free. It doesn't require you to Counterblast for its go every single turn. It's free. So really, if you want to, you can get away with 2 Counterblasts each turn and have 5 attacks. If you have the Soul, you can make it 1 Counterblast, 1 Soul to get 5 attacks, but you can go 6 attacks with 2 CB and 1 Soul Blast. Mainly because Maelstrom makes a restander that's CB1, you have Tidal, and you have Wheel Assault. That's your ways to get to the 4, 5, 6 battles, and it's, a little more cost effective in that sense too. And it's a constant pressure gaining type of build too. And what I really like about Maelstrom compared to Flagburg is that Algos can search the top 7, and then Maelstrom can just make any restander from the Soul at will. That consistency and reliance of executing your win and image is significantly increased compared to Flagburg, where you're hoping to draw into the pieces, and you're hoping to have the right pieces with the right amount of resources still left to use for the following turn too. And if you played any of this decks, you would understand at that level. It's like, oh, I know what you're getting at. So that's one of the things, is like you can still do 4 or 5 attacks without having to need so much Counterblast, so much Soul. And I was able to stay at low damage a little more. I played against decks like Flagburg, Prison, for example. And it's different types of builds. With the matchup, it struggles just like Flagburg when you don't Persona Ride. When you do Persona Ride, this deck is really strong, just like Flagburg too. So it's really cool that it has similarities, but those are like the small differences. And remember, this is the first wave of support for Maelstrom too. There is still more room for improvement, and I think this leads me more into the suggestion side. So one of the things that I was thinking is actually changing the right line a little bit. And what I mean by that is that I can change maybe Theo out for a Rancor Chain. The grade 1 for Zorga, where you can Soul Blast, draw 2, and then you can discard an order. And we play a good amount of orders, so you can actually adjust the ratios if you want to increase it more for the consistency of that too. So you draw 2 and discard 1 rather than draw 2, discard 2 because of the effect. And you can remove Judgment Maelstrom out of the build and play more Spiritual Body Condensations, maybe make room for Nectar. You can play different ratios of Resentment or Ideal Far Away, for example, so you can mess with that a little more too. And the other thing that I was thinking too, with addition to that, something that I've been doing recently with Flagburg, and this is thanks to Adult Orange, she has shown a build that she topped with, where you played enough orders with the Zorga Ride Chain up to 1 and 2, and then 3 Prison Dragons, the one that you're able to revive whenever an order is placed, or played, I should say. And so if you're playing constantly every single turn an order, especially the early ones, if you're doing like Spiritual Body Condensation or Ideal Far Away on grade 2 turn or grade 1 turn, you can have an early game that's even more stronger than it is just how it is. And it's just free bodies, because again, every single turn you're discarding for the right line. What's cool, Maelstrom makes you discard cards, so you can discard excess orders. You can discard the Prison Dragon too, to set that up when you play the prison or when you play the order cards, right, to revive those and make it easier. 15k bodies, and they hit over 13k Vanguards too, which is actually really nice if you think about it. They can be also wheel assault targets too. That's the thing that I think that I'm excited to try out, is that there's some synergy with wheel assault there. Where Flagburg is that you had to work with what you had in your front row, and then the Shelling Cannon in the behind the Vanguard. But if you had like a Prison Dragon that could easily revive itself, but if you already have the restanders in the front row, it's just like I can't make use of the the Prison Dragon if I wanted to. In this deck, you can, because you have Wheel Assault and you can swap things around, which I think is really cool, and I think it's worth exploring. So that's my suggestion, and that's something that I think I will change to try that out. I really wanted to give Theo, like the core right line, a chance, and also the Judgment Order. Try to see its benefits, but I see that there's some preferences that you can do, pros and cons, and it really is determined on the metagame too. If you feel like the early aggression with Prison Dragons would help, I think that would be more appropriate for that meta. But if it's more of a slower meta, maybe this build is a lot more suited to it too, because you know, Theo can get you this set or guarantee, and you can kind of work from yourself there too, and really just kind of go from there. So my final thoughts on it too is just like, this deck for the first wave of support is actually already solid. I'm impressed. When Flagburg came out with its first wave of support, it was good when it had a high roll and it had the right resources and the right pieces, but you can tell like it needed a second wave of support. You know, this deck you can probably take out to a locals and actually wreck some people if they don't see this coming. Like, for real, I was really impressed with this. It actually was holding on against Prison. It really had a tough time, obviously, when they pull off the Pure Lights and they got to the 10 cards in Prison. What I really like about this, it has a better Prison matchup than Flagburg, because again, your Vanguard's not using a Counterblast, so the Counterblast that you needed to save for Flagburg, now you can use it to bring back 2 units from the Prison, which is actually important, because you want them not to get to 10 cards and also build a field on top of that too. So it's just those little things too. And so personally, I like how this is going and how this is turning out too. So I would suggest, you know, try it out for yourself, especially if you already have like the Stoicheia cards, especially if you have the Inlet Pulses. I know right now there's a high demand for Inlet Pulse for like almost every Stoicheia deck. Like, the one thing that I can see in the future, even before this set, if there's another wave of support, or more cards yet to be revealed to help Maelstrom for specifically, this has the Magnolia problem, where you had Magnolia taking advantage of Inlet Pulse, like the Elder. If you open up with Inlets, and it's very strong with it. I think Inlet is honestly also carrying this deck in a way too, where you can build a hand of 10 plus cards. Yeah, you can build a hand of 10 plus cards, and that's very important in Aqua Force type of decks too. So I can see that coming too, if that becomes a problem. But if the metagame is more further along where I can kind of deal with that, and that's fairer than it was before when Magnolia used it, and then I'm fine with it. But Inlet Pulse, still good, very valuable. I think it's carrying this deck right now, especially since the first wave of support. Let me know what you guys thinking too. It's like, what are you guys, you know, proxy testing, trying out some ideas, theory crafting, or maybe just finding out for yourself. If there's any ideas or suggestions, feel free to share. I love to, like, you know, solidify this a little bit, and then, you know, once the real cards come out, maybe we have a more solidified deck build by then too. I'm excited to try this out as kind of a change of pace outside of Zorga, Flagburg, you know, Stoicheia type of decks. So I'm just excited, and I welcome it too, especially for those nostalgic players too. I'm sure you guys are excited for that. I may tweak with this in premium, because it does have some good synergy, and you can kind of slap a G-Zone on it. But I don't know, it'll be more of a fun deck, really, not like a competitive deck compared to like Favas and, you know, when Ripples were, you know, not hit by the ban list kind of thing. But this is, there's some synergy. It's fun. It's overdressed. You can stick a G-Zone and kind of go from there too. So without further ado, you know, thanks for watching. Again, if you want to support the channel, you can support with the affiliated links: Nex Lvl Gaming, TCG Player, Treaty Card Game Mint, and also 50 Card Shop too. And you guys can use the promo codes as well too. So until the next one, amigos. Bye.